And in this final section on supporting physical well-being, we'll be looking at managing continence and on sleep problems leading to disturbed nights. So we're going to think about continence and dementia. Now, many people with dementia don't become incontinent, or if they do, it's only when their illness is quite advanced. Having said that, in some types of dementia, incontinence can feature earlier, but there can be many reasons not related to the dementia at all why a person can begin to experience continence problems, and it's really important not to miss these and simply put any continence problems down to the dementia. So what are some of the medical reasons for incontinence? And remembering that the incidence of these will increase with age. So people with dementia, many people with dementia are in the older age group. So one is urinary tract infections, commoner among women, but the chaps don't get away scot-free. Prostate gland problems can also cause problems with continence. Pre-existing bowel conditions, and side effects of medication. And one particular side effect of medication can be constipation, and it's important to be aware that what might appear to be fecal incontinence might in fact be liquid feces slipping around an impacted stool. People with dementia are likely to be at increased risk of urinary tract infections. This is because they have a weakened immune system, because of an underlying disease process, and quite likely because they're older, they may have other medical conditions as well. Possibly their hygiene is reduced, possibly they're incontinent, and both these things would increase the risk of infection, of cross-infection. And possibly they're not drinking enough, so dehydration is another possible cause of urinary tract infections. Now, any acute infection, so that might be a urine infection, it might be a chest infection, can cause what we call an acute confusional state or delirium. And unfortunately, this can be mistaken for a worsening in the dementia, whereas if it's recognised as a delirium, it can be treated and can improve quickly. So on the next slide, we're going to look at what are the signs of a delirium. So it's important to recognise delirium, but there are different types. There is one called hyperactive delirium, which is probably the one that you'd be most likely to link with that word delirium. It's a restless, pacing, agitated type behaviour, and may well include hallucinations. But there is also hypoactive delirium, where the person might actually just appear withdrawn, sleepy, in a daze, and it's possible to have a mixture of the two, so switching from one to the other. And then there are other continence problems related more specifically to the dementia. So it may be, the brain controls everything, so it may be that the actual nerve pathways in the brain that are involved in bladder and bowel control have been affected. Or it may simply be that they aren't able to communicate that they need the toilet. It may be more around forgetting the need until it's too late, possibly coupled with mobility problems, meaning that actually you need more time, not less, to get to the toilet and undo clothing, etc. And all of that might be compounded by struggling to actually remember where the toilet is in the first instance and recognise where to go. And that sounds a bit extraordinary, but it can be the case that even a place that should be very familiar becomes muddled in the person's mind in terms of location of the toilet. So is there anything that we can suggest that might help? So if you think the problem is around being able to let you know that they need the toilet or to ask for help in good time, it might be more about trying to become aware and alert to the signs. Often if a person isn't able to actually say they need the toilet, they might start to look a little bit uncomfortable, to perhaps move around in their seat, that kind of thing. If you think it's more a remembering and recognizing the need to go to the toilet, that's where possibly getting into the habit of a routine and regular reminders might reduce the risk of accidents. But maybe these accidents are more as a result of mobility and balance problems. It can become tricky if you're needing to hang on to a frame and hold clothing to be able to sit down, and zips and buttons and all that sort of thing. So it is worth thinking about the suitability of clothing, making things that are easier to take off. Raised toilet seats, that would be via the occupational therapy department, and grab rails just in the right place to hold on to. And if you think it's more about recognizing or knowing where to find the toilet, that's where things like signs and pictures on the door, leaving the door open, putting a light on at night in the toilet area, or a motion sensor so that a sort of trail lights up. And actually within the toilet, having a good colour contrast between the toilet seat and the floor. Maybe having, if you don't like the idea of signs on the toilet door, perhaps having a contrasting colour to the paintwork of the door would be enough to help the person remember where to locate the toilet. And this is just a visual aid to thinking about whether you yourself or the person you're caring for is drinking enough in terms of the colour of the urine. And how much should we be drinking? Well, it is weight dependent. So somebody who weighs 7 stone or 44 kilograms needs to be drinking about 2.5 pints, 1.5 litres, whereas someone weighing 10 stone, 63 kilograms, needs to be drinking about 4 pints, 2.25 litres. And on the next slide, we'll be looking at what should we be drinking. So ideally, the things we drink need to be the things on the right-hand side of this chart. So drinks that don't irritate the bladder. That's particularly important if the person is becoming dehydrated. So obviously water is ideal, but all types of diluted juices and fresh drinks, non-acidic, so things like the pineapple there, or watered down fresh drinks. Herbal teas are good, red bush tea is good, and decaffeinated teas and coffees. And then you can see what's on the other side. The one thing that surprised me was the green tea. I was surprised that was an irritant, but alcohol, caffeine, fizzy drinks, those sorts of things, and acidic fruit juices are not so good in terms of particularly if a person is dehydrated, in terms of a non-irritant drink. So what can we do to help with fecal continence? Well, trying to get the person moving about, a short walk around the block every day, that kind of thing, is certainly beneficial. Encouraging fibre intake, but that has to be in combination with fluids. Natural products, so prune juice is supposed to be good, as is golden linseed that can be found with the nuts and the seeds in the supermarket. And then what about laxatives? How do they work? Well, some laxatives work by softening the stools, others also stimulate the bowel. They can be very helpful, but it needs to be on medical advice, because overuse of certain laxatives can lead to dependency and actually decrease bowel function. Sometimes it can be really useful to be able to use disabled toilets in terms of supporting the person with dementia, and some disabled toilets are locked. So just to be aware that you can have a radar key which gives you access to those toilets, and this is how to get hold of one. There's also a website, www.loo.org, which gives information about changing places and toilets, where they all are, when they're open, how to get there, etc. And another potentially helpful tip if you're supporting someone with continence problems is that you can order something called a Just Can't Wait card produced by the Bladder and Bowel organisation. And the idea about that is that if a person is caught short and needs to use a facility, for instance, in a shop or that kind of thing, by showing the card, there should be a recognition that you could perhaps use the staff toilets, that kind of thing. And finally, if the person you're caring for is becoming incontinent, don't struggle alone. Speak to their GP, and usually either the district nurse will come out and help and advise in terms of continence aids, or perhaps they'll be referred to the Continence Advisory Service for help and support. In the next couple of slides, we're going to look at potential sleep problems associated with dementia. One of them is simply that the person is sleeping more during the day, possibly linked to less motivation, not being able to think what to do, so they're dozing off, and then they're not tired at night. So if you suspect that that's the problem, the things that will help are to try and establish some sort of routine of activity during the day, whether that's clubs, day centres, daily walks, in order to try and make sure that by the time it comes to night time, they're tired and ready to sleep. Another potential problem might be that they're uncomfortable at night, but not recognising that for themselves or not able to tell you. Maybe that they're too hot, too cold, in pain. And so thinking about that, obviously the practical things about making sure that they've changed their bedding to the appropriate outdoor temperature, that they've got heating or not heating in the room, etc. But the other thing to think about, because the pain might be arthritic or something else, is might some regular pain relief help? As we said in the first presentation, the doctors are reluctant to use sleeping tablets, but some people actually think of the couple of paracetamol they take at night as being their sleeping tablet, because it just takes the edge off the discomfort that's stopping them from sleeping. Another potential difficulty is becoming muddled in terms of day and night. And sometimes this is particularly the case in the very light summer months, or on the very dark winter evenings. So some sort of control of lighting, so turning up the light as it gets darker early in the evening, or blackout curtains in the summer might help here. Sometimes it's about mixing up the real and the imaginary, and particularly things like watching the news last thing at night and then beginning to think that some of the traumatic images perhaps posted on the television are happening in the person's reality. So it's worth experimenting if you think that's the case with avoiding those kind of stories that could create that kind of anxiety near to bedtime, and try and go for a kind of relaxing wind down bedtime routine. And I don't know whether any of you have ever done a lot of travelling where you're perhaps in a different bedroom every night for a few days, and waking up at night and having that momentary, where am I? If it's pitch black, which side of the bed do I get out? Where's the door? That kind of thing. Because it does cause that sort of burst of adrenaline. And it is possible that someone with dementia who's disorientated to time might be experiencing that when they just kind of wake naturally at some point in the night. And then that anxiety, that rush of adrenaline is making them wake more fully. In that kind of instance, to be trying to reason with them logically that they are at home and nothing's changed, etc., may be less effective. It's possibly more a case of trying some of the strategies we talked about in the communication session, in terms of calmly responding to how they're feeling. Oh, you're a bit worried, don't worry, I'm with you, that kind of thing, and possibly even having to resort to a cup of tea and then back to bed. So this is just a bit of a useful reminder for all of us. 10 tips to beat insomnia. So tip number 1, keep regular sleep hours and try and go to bed and get up at roughly the same time every day. It might seem tempting to try and catch up on sleep after a bad night, but doing so on a regular basis can disrupt your sleep routine. A restful sleeping environment, so your bedroom should be a peaceful place with temperature, lighting and noise controlled so that it helps you to fall and stay asleep. Make sure your bed is comfortable, that the mattress isn't too soft, too hard, the bed isn't too small or too old. Exercise is great, so sort of moderate, regular exercise can really help with getting a good night's sleep. Cutting down on caffeine. Tea, coffee, energy drinks, colas, especially in the evening. Caffeine interferes with the process of falling asleep and also apparently prevents deep sleep. So instead, trying to have a warm, milky drink or herbal tea. Not too much food or alcohol, especially late at night, because that can interrupt your sleep patterns. Some people say that a glass of wine helps them to fall asleep. Well, it might initially, but it will disrupt sleep later in the night. Don't smoke. Nicotine is a stimulant, so people who smoke take longer to fall asleep apparently and wake more frequently and often have more disrupted sleep. Trying to find ways of relaxing before going to bed. That might be a warm bath, it might be listening to certain types of music, gradually dimming the lights. And this is a strange one, but if you can't sleep, get up. So lying there tossing and turning, that doesn't help. Try and do something that will relax you, help you to feel sleepy, and then go back to bed. So those are basic tips, some of which just might be a useful reminder. But obviously, if you are caring for someone with dementia and you're living in the same house as they are, you need to sleep in order to maintain your ability to care. What are some of the things we can suggest? Well, one is, if this is possible, to make the environment safe so that you can relax even if they get up and start pottering around at night. Now, there are things that you can do to assist with that, depending on what you think the risks are. If you're very concerned that they might go out at night, out of the front door, you might want to have an alarm to alert you in case that's what happens, so you can relax knowing that should they open the front door, you will wake up. It may be that you're worried that they'll turn on the gas, in which case you can get the gas port to come and put a concealed tap so that you can switch the gas off before you go to bed. So likewise, identifying where you think the risks are and trying to minimize them so that you can just turn over and go back to bed even if they get up. And the chances are that they might potter for a while and then doze off in an armchair downstairs, that kind of thing. What else could we suggest? Well, there are night sitters, but these are expensive and usually only used in more extreme circumstances. Sometimes, as part of their social services assessment, the need for you to have a break, so a respite care break means a break for you, is identified, and this would usually be in terms of a few days or a week in a care home, just to give you a chance to have a rest. And sometimes families are fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to help, so usually that's in terms of another family member coming into your home and you going and staying elsewhere for the odd night off to rest and recover. Medication, it's at the bottom of the list, as was said in the very first presentation. It tends to be used as a, not as a last resort, but if someone has got their day-night rhythm mixed up, then it might be used in the short term. But the problem is that it can leave someone sedated when they get up and put them at increased risk of falls. So generally they try not to do that unless absolutely necessary. So thank you so much for your attention. There is an information pack with additional resources that you might find helpful, and we'll now stop for your final questions and comments.